Hello, and welcome to the All Wings Report in X-Wing and Armada panel. We're real excited to talk about some sweet Armada and X-Wing stuff with you all. My name is Luke Eddy. I'm a lead developer at Atomic Mass Games. And joining us, we have some special guests here. Plummer, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Michael Plummer. I'm a game developer here at Atomic Mass Games.
And then we also have, oh, go ahead.
I was jumping right in. I'm Gavin Duffy. I'm product line manager at Atomic Mass Games, and I've been working with X-Wing and Armada since 2017. So been here for a while. Behind the scenes.
Yeah, an old hat. So we're gonna give you guys some info on what it takes to make these game lines, some of the different aspects of them in terms of what we do for design, what we do for development, and then what we do for production. So to kick us off, well, I should say, also after that too, we're also going to talk about some sweet spoilers too. So definitely stay tuned. We're going to start by talking about some Armada, and we're going to move into some X-Wing. So before we do that though, like I said, we want to sort of get into a bit of what we do, what our roles are. So to start us off, we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to design these games. So the biggest thing that we do, really, in designing Star Wars games and designing X-Wing and Armada, it's all about bringing the Star Wars ships that you see on screen to life in the gameplay of a miniatures game. So that involves, well, first of all, watching a lot of Star Wars. I think Gavin and Plummer can both attest to going through, all of the movies, all of Clone Wars, lots of hours spent on Wikipedia, looking up, still going through frame by frame sometimes of those shows or those movies, looking for, oh, exactly how does this look, and like exactly what does this do, what does it shoot, that sort of thing. So that's a big part of it. And we take that information and, it's about translating that into gameplay then. And there's sort of two things that we're always sort of balancing at the same time when we do this, which is, we're working with an existing IP. We're working with Star Wars, which is great. It gives us so much sort of to work with. Star Wars is awesome. And that's almost a job requirement of working here, is liking Star Wars. So we've got that covered. We're all huge fans of Star Wars, and we nerd out about Star Wars stuff all the time. So that's really a lot of fun. That's a really, fun aspect of the job. And we have all these sweet things from Star Wars that we want to put into the game. Often it's a matter of like, what's the next cool thing that we haven't added to the game yet? What's the fan favorite ship or fan favorite character that could be, a commander or, a pilot or an upgrade or something like that, and that really dictates a lot of what we put into the game. Now, what we balance that with, though, is like what mechanics actually are beneficial to the game. So something might work one way that we see in media, but if we translate that exactly one for one into how it works in X-Wing or in Armada, that can really imbalance the game, perhaps. Star Wars is generally sometimes more of a fantasy and less of a sci-fi. And there's certainly sci-fi elements, of course, but when we do that translation into game mechanics, it's a lot of sort of considering what's cool that we want to see, but and how do we simulate that in the game mechanics of these game lines of X-Wing and of Armada, but also like what do those games need? If it's for a particular faction, what works within that faction, what creates synergies for the other ships that it's going to be flying alongside. So there's sort of a little bit of balancing needs versus wants whenever we do that sort of game design.
There's a reason it took this long to get Vader in the TIE Defender.
Yes, that is a great example. Yeah, where like it took a lot of careful consideration of like how we can do that right and like not just jumping the gun on it. So yeah, and then another thing I wanted to touch on too is just, there's also consideration for ease of play versus interesting mechanics. X-Wing and Armada are both games that have been around for a long time. We've got, you know, a lot of dedicated fans who have been a part of the game for a very long time. And we also have new players, though, that we want to bring in, people who are just discovering these games. And so there's always a balance there, too, of sort of continuing to present interesting strategies and mechanics and opportunities for our veteran players, but balancing with the fact that, you know, there's a threshold where, you know, we always want to have mechanics and abilities and card text that is, for the most part, readily understandable. You know, players, it's easy to grok, to understand what it's going to do. It has expected results, that sort of thing. So there's a balancing act there, too, of trying to keep things fresh and interesting, but then also sort of, you know, always being mindful that we're onboarding new players. Anyone could get into the game at any point, pick up any ship, you know, so sometimes, you know, one expansion will have these pilots are more geared towards, you know, a higher complexity. These are for our veterans, you know, and other ships in that same expansion that might be intentionally easier to fly, you know, a little more straightforward. So that's also a balancing act that we always have to work on. So, you know, I don't know if Plummer, you want to speak to any of that, you know, in terms of balancing, you know, that sort of like ease of play versus interesting mechanics. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I think that interesting mechanics are something that everyone loves, and it is very tempting to make something super cool because, you know, I love this thing in Star Wars. I love this scene from the movie, and I want to be able to see that on the table. But you do need to make sure that you don't need to look too deeply into the rules to understand how it works, that you can see the synergies and, you know, cater to everyone that's playing the game and everyone who wants to play the games in all the different ways that you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, you know, something we'll speak to throughout this panel is like, you know, that it's not like we want to have like sort of you know, like a lowest common denominator here or anything like that. You know, often, you know, we have like a benchmark we're trying to hit, but then we'll diverge a bit. We'll do like, oh yeah, this thing is a little more complex, or this thing is a little simpler. And I think, you know, to what I was saying, you know, a second ago, like that's part of our philosophy of like, you know, not every single thing we make is necessarily for every single person. We have a wide audience, you know, and we're trying to cater to different play styles, you know, as well as experience levels. So, but I think that's enough for me about some of our sort of broad design philosophies. I want to get into some more specifics about actually doing development work. And we have some things we're going to show off today. We're not going to tease like way far out there stuff quite yet. So something we can talk about a little more concretely, though, because we just put it out, is doing development for organized play. And that's something that Atomic Mass Games has been doing a really good job with, is creating sort of interesting game modes and experiences through their organized play. And that's something we're going to continue to do for these game lines, for Armada and X-Wing. So Plummer, if you want to touch on, I guess, your most recent development work in terms of organized play, and talk a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, so first off, just want to talk about organized play broadly, because it's such a huge topic and there's so many different ways that you can do it. And the way that I think about organized play specifically is it's an opportunity to play with your miniatures in a new and exciting way. I think that most people can look back at a time when they got into a game for the first time with all their friends and everybody was huddled around rule books and checking out cool miniatures. And there's this magic to a new game where you haven't quite, you know, solved the game, quote unquote. And I think that organized play is a great way to kind of reinvigorate that energy by changing things in how the game plays, or adding new twists, new layers of complexity and flavors, and bringing people back to a place where they're just gathering with their friends, gathering with all the people that play the game in the area, and playing something new and having that excitement again that can sometimes go away as metas grow stale, or it's been a little while since something came out that you're excited about. Organized play is a great way to just keep that excitement about the game rolling. And the first thing that I've worked on here at Atomic Mass is the Unconventional Warfare event, which is happening right now. And that is a progressive gameplay event that runs over the 3 days of Mini-stravaganza. It runs across all of the existing Star Wars game lines, so Armada and X-Wing definitely in there. It is focused on unconventional tactics. So kind of where I came from with this, the same idea Luke was talking about loving Star Wars and loving all these cool things and what we want to see. I was watching clips of movies and I went back to all my favorite battles from Star Wars movies. And I was looking at them, and what I saw was the war in Star Wars is everywhere and it's constantly happening, but we don't get to see specifically, every skirmish, every battle that happens. You see a lot of it in Clone Wars. You see, classic, this is how the clones fight, this is how the droids fight. But when you go into the movies or the specific episodes that everyone's always talking about, it's always that something is different here. There's a different tactic, a different strategy. Something happened and they had to think outside of the box. So I wanted to try and bring that into these games for this event. And one of the ways that I thought to do that was to add some list building restrictions for fleet building and for squad building in Armada and X-Wing, kind of similar to the things that we do in Star Wars Legion. So I brought that idea over with the thought that, creating some restrictions and some limitations allows us to play with the balance of the game, add some new mechanics, and just do interesting things. So that's kind of where I came from with that. And hopefully it's going to encourage some different play styles and give people the way to play with their miniatures in a different way and have fun with it. So maybe you really love Squadrons and Armada, and if so, then Unrivaled Starfighters is great for you. Or if you absolutely love your Star Destroyers, Anvil and Hammer might be the way that you want to go when you play a game. And I think the fun thing about this specific event is that you don't have to pick one strategic approach for all your games. You can change that in between every game. You can try everything that's out there. So yeah, that just gives you a lot of options with what to play with. And so then I talked about a progressive gameplay event. So organized play, there's lots of different things we can do, right? We could do a narrative event. You can do these progressive gameplay events. We could just do something completely off the wall. We were talking about Vader Down in the stream at the beginning of February. So that is going to be, something completely different. So there's all these things that we can do. And a progressive gameplay event is that it rolls on as the event goes on, and there are new layers of complexity and flavor that are added. It's an incentive to play the game over multiple days, a chance to, watch the complexity get deeper. I think these events are a lot like a delicious parfait or a trifle. They have lots of layers of really delicious things, but they're really at their best once you've kind of dug in and all the flavors have mixed together and you get everything. So I think that's a lot of fun. I hope everyone else has a lot of fun. And another big thing to remember with these is that you have all this information now. It's right in front of you. So, 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, in 3 weeks, whenever you want to play Armada, you want to play X-Wing, but you're not really in the mood for a normal game. You can pull these out and you can play these games. You can play one game a week and then add in the perks over time. Really organized play is great because it just broadens your experience with the game, the things that you can do with it, and gives you lots of ways to make new friends and play with the friends that you have.
Yeah,
my first experience with X-Wing was actually being introduced by a friend. He brought it into where we were working at the time and busted open his The Force Awakens core set, and we played together on a ping pong table. So it doesn't always have to be these high-level competitive events to get into it and just enjoy the game.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, Plumber, you touched on a lot of things there that are what we're trying to do here is sort of give you permission to play the game in different and interesting ways. Again, a big part of minis games is that sense of ownership of the miniatures. Whether it's collecting X-Wing ships or it's maybe you're repainting them even, or for other game lines that involve even more hobbying, there's that sense of ownership of the miniatures themselves. And you can do whatever you want with those, and so these organized play things, what we want to sort of get people to help them understand is that, you can do whatever you want with these. And so they're sort of giving you permission to play in interesting, exciting ways. And I hope people check out the Unconventional Warfare organized play event. It's online right now. And as Palmer alluded to, we want people to play right now and sort of participate in a global event, but these are going to stay online. And that's going to be true of all of our organized play materials that we put out, so you can go back and replay these, and maybe set up your own little event, maybe it's you and your friend, and a couple other people create a league or something like that. And you play these progressive games with each other. So, really we're trying to, like I said, give people different ways to use their miniatures.
And you touched on something that is really impactful for me when you were saying, you can do anything you want. You can play with these miniatures. You can play with these games any way that you want to. My career, my education began in the theater. I was an actor, and there was a thing that directors would often say, and they would, when people were getting too stiff and not doing well in their acting, they would say, it's called a play, not a serious. And I think that applies here to games too. Like, it's really easy to get really stuck into what's the most optimal play, what's the perfect way to play this game so that I win. And it's okay to just play with your miniatures sometimes and just have a great time and make pew pew noises and throw some dice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, some of the most fun I've had playing X-Wing was playing Aces High before it was Aces High, when it was just known as Furball, and it was just a fan mode, like just one ship, just, each player dogfighting. You're playing with, more than 2 people, 3, 4, 5, any random number. So there's a lot of different ways to play it, and we want to encourage that for sure. So cool. And then I believe we have hinted at the fact that there are, as a part of the global, OP event, that there is going to be sort of some rewards, if you will, for which side, the light or the dark, happens to sort of like perform better here. So Plumber, do you want to let them know what they have to look forward to?
Oh, of course. So we're going to be doing some alternate art cards for some upgrades from X-Wing and Armada. And again, like Luke said, depending on which side wins the event, the light side or the dark side, it's going to theme the art. And so for this event, we have chosen for X-Wing, it is going to be an alternate art for the Force upgrade card Sense. And for Armada, we're going to have the Fleet Command upgrade card Intensify Firepower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So get your games in so you can get what you want.
Best. Exactly. Yeah. If you play, the Empire or Separatists or something like that, and you're like, oh man, I want the alternate art card of those to be some sort of dark side themed, Separatist or Imperial themed card, get those games in, So try and sway the balance of the Force, if you will. Cool. All right. So we're going to move on from design and development here to touch on sort of a less talked about aspect of designing or making these games, but is equally as important, which is what it takes to produce them. So Gavin here, our project line manager for Armada and X-Wing, do you want to touch on just what it even is that a project line manager does?
Yeah. I'm not the face of the game like these 2 beautiful guys here. So not a lot of people know who I am, and the fact that you don't is probably means I'm doing my job all right. I'm doing all the a lot of background work, kind of, making sure all the departments really work together to make the products really come to life. That's working with the developers, that's working with the art team, the sculpting team. It's also working with external production and our manufacturer. I play a big role in the licensing, working with Star Wars weekly. It's anything from bringing questions to them, like, hey, this is a really cool blaster, what's it called? Simple stuff like that, to more complex things like, we really want Lando to be able to do this really thematic thing on the tabletop. What do you guys feel about that? Like, what's your response to that? Kind of heading those types of conversations and trying to make the product come together as cohesively and as strongly as possible. As Luke kind of hit on earlier about, reviewing all the shows and the movies and the media and the comics and the novels and all that stuff, a lot of times what I do on the side while at work is like, all right, you know what? We're going to do the LAT finally. It's super cool and we want to see it in X-Wing. So then I will go and look up every Clone Wars episode that the LAT appears in and every movie that the LAT's in and watch them and find the iconic battles, the iconic pilots, who rides in them, what kind of things we want to highlight in the art, any sort of weird special things that we see it do that I can bring to the developer and be like, hey, there's this really weird maneuver that it does. And a good example of that is in Heralds of Hope. When Poe Dameron in the Resistance cartoon teaches Kazuda to basically drift around an asteroid with his X-Wing, we thought that was really interesting and would be a perfect place to bring in an X-Wing specific upgrade card for that. So I brought that to the developer's attention and we kind of worked on that together. So sometimes I help bring a little inspiration if the developer is having a hard time. If there's 8 to 10 pilots, it can be hard to come up with new ideas for the ship in one product. So then somebody comes over who's not just totally immersed in the mechanics is like, hey, what if it just did this weird thing? And like, oh, okay, kind of think about it and work on that. So yeah, I also work a lot on the physical miniature that you see. I'm not a sculptor. The sculpting team does that, and they do an amazing job. But the paint jobs for X-Wing and Armada, I have a big hand in that. Researching the schemes, finding reference for that, sometimes even hand painting the model for the miniature for production and sending it off. And then I do all the approvals. They send me all the test shots and the big papers full of like cards that are huge, but not the actual card before they print it, and just checking for those kind of errors. So there's a lot that I do. It's kind of widespread across the company.
Yeah, it's sort of what don't you do, Gavin? a little bit of everything, making sure everything is on track.
Yeah, these project line managers are like the lifeblood. They make sure everything happens, right? You know, everybody else has one little piece of the puzzle, and y'all get to sit there and put it all together and maybe add a piece. And I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to be able to work on kind of all aspects, but also you get the anxiety of every department at the same time.
Very true. Yes, I do. One thing I do appreciate is that Gavin now knows the engine color of every single Star Wars ship, because he had to be the one who double checked, because we added engine glow to all of the X-Wing 2.0 ships, and he had to be the one to go through and check what is the engine color of this ship and that ship and this ship and that ship. Yeah,
the engine glow was a unique experience because I think it was the TIE Whisper. No, it was Kylo's TIE, and I was like, hey, we should really add this red in the back because it's really unique to this black ship that doesn't have a ton of defining features. And then, you know, the people at the top were like, that's a pretty good idea. Put it on all of them. And I was like, oh, okay.
The best part is that is information that is going to live in your brain for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Just like
cool.
Luke can name every blaster.
I know, right? Yep, every blaster that's been in Legion. Yes. So cool. That's great, Gavin. I really appreciate you touching on some of the aspects of your job, because, you know, like I've sort of said, you're sort of an unsung hero and an important part of, you know, these game lines and making them happen. Well, I think we can move on to some more specific Armada talk. So we've got some cards to talk about, and we have, I think these are already available on the Atomic Mass Twitch. You can look these up and see what we're talking about. So go check those out. We're going to talk about the new Clone Wars factions for Armada. They've already had one set of expansions, and we're going to be talking about the next one coming out. And so I think briefly I'm going to touch on a little bit of like some of the faction identities for these new Clone Wars Armada factions, and then we're going to talk about the cards and see kind of how those cards illustrate these. So first up, we have the Republic. And so one of the, in terms of designing the Republic for Armada, ships were pretty easy in that, you know, it's kind of, these are precursors to a lot of the Imperial ships. So taking the designs of those Empire ships and tweaking them a little bit to be like, oh, here's the, you know, the sort of precursor version of this. And in some instances, in the case of the Pelta, one of the new ships coming out here, it's sort of the precursor to a Rebel ship that we saw in Rebels, the Phoenix One, Phoenix Home, and then Phoenix Home, right. So sort of the Republic is borrowing from a lot of existing designs, whereas the Separatists, a lot of those ship designs are pretty unique. You know, one of the main developers who we had working on this line was the illustrious Franklin Simpson Brooks, Frank Brooks, as we all know and love from X-Wing. He got to do a little Armada design for us for these expansions specifically, and he, you know, tried to do some interesting sort of unconventional designs with the Separatist ships, since they weren't really borrowing from any previous iterations, or they weren't really precursors to any other ships we see in the Star Wars universe. So, you know, a lot of the Separatist ships are sort of brand new in a way, if you will. And there's some sort of interesting iterations there. And a lot of these new factions have those sorts of like parodies but differences. You know, another one being that the Republic does a lot of has a lot of effects where you have a powerful commander or, you know, a named squadron, unique squadron that buffs a lot of generic squadrons. You know, so you care more about your generic squadrons because you can get them to perform better. You know, it's the clones are all, you know, seem at face value sort of all just, you know, the nameless, faceless clones, but they actually, you know, as the Clone Wars goes on, they develop personalities. They're each unique individuals, you know, and sort of that's reflected in the gameplay of the Republic faction. You know, they care about those generic squadrons. Conversely, you have the Separatists who, you know, a lot of their abilities, for example, the General Grievous, he's just, you know, throwing squadrons into the grinder, you know, just bodies, you know, to just screen and block and protect him.
General Grievous.
Yep, very General Grievous. And it's again, that's that sort of reverse where like, oh, they're both playing with sort of non-unique squadrons, but the Republic cares about them, whereas the Separatist is just, you know, just more bodies thrown at the problem. And then I think another interesting sort of difference between them a little bit is that the Republic is trying to like play smarter in a way, sort of have, and this is exemplified in some of the Jedi commanders, you know, sort of playing outside of the box a little bit, being a little unorthodox. You know, that's Anakin is of course the epitome of that. That we see in the Clone Wars. But the Separatists, on the other hand, you know, they don't really have a lot of imagination. You know, they're very sort of like straightforward goals, but they're very, very efficient about it. You know, so they're sort of trading efficiency for being a little predictable sometimes, you know, a little short-sighted, if you will. And so I just wanted to touch on those aspects. Oh yeah, go ahead, Plummer.
I was just going to say that Luke and I had one of those like deep philosophical conversations about the themes in Star Wars and all the cool things you see just yesterday when we were talking about this stuff, getting ready for today. And I just really like the idea that when you look at, you know, the Galactic Republic versus the Separatists, you know, the idea of the clones is they're all the same person, right? Like the same body, same muscle mass. You know how your troops are going to perform, which is kind of the same idea as the droids. So you kind of get this idea of the efficiency of humans that can make a decision, right? Because the clones have personalities and they can make an independent thought and do something, versus the absolute efficiency of a droid army that is programmed, that does not make independent decisions. And I just think it comes up a lot in these upgrades, and you can see it in the design of these two factions in particular. And I think it's really fascinating and really fun.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yes.
I know the developer of the first wave of Armada, Michael Gurnis, really kind of what you touched on earlier about the he had a lot of fun really balancing the Empire versus the Galactic Republic. Because you're not just balancing, you know, the Republic against the Separatists, because you have a whole body of existing game products that you're trying to match and balance with as well. And, you know, the Venator, which Michael didn't work on, but is basically the precursor of the Imperial Star Destroyer, right? How do you make that feel the same but act differently and really fit into these themes that you guys are discussing? And it was kind of a lot of fun hearing him bounce ideas around the room. Back before we worked from home, we were all the developers and me were all in the same room, and it was constant talking, and it was a lot of fun and a lot of crazy ideas whizzed around.
Yeah. So I think we have some card reveals now that we can show off, we can work through. And Plummer, you're going to walk us through these. And as I was alluding to, like these sorts of different faction identities are going to come through in these cards we're going to talk about. So
yeah,
go
very
ahead,
much.
Plummer, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, so first we're going to look at some of the remaining upgrades for the Pelta-class frigate expansion. And just as a reminder, that expansion gives you options for the Pelta-class transport frigate and the Pelta-class medical frigate. They're kind of a middleweight ship for the Republic. They both have engineering 4, so they stick around for a long time. They're very exciting. So let's start off with Admiral Yularen. So Admiral Yularen is a commander upgrade, so his ability affects the entire fleet, and he kind of brings a new meaning to squadron superiority, right? So he gives a fleet-wide bump to the efficiency of your squadron command tokens, and that makes early squadron commands really, really good because you can hold on to those tokens and use them later when they're more useful and kind of fit them into your tactics. And then he also has a repair squadron ability, which is unique and new and very exciting. It's a great way to kind of protect your investment in your squadrons. And I think it gives players a little bit of agency about which of their squadrons are going to survive to make their attack run. So if you really need, your bombers or a specific unique squadron to survive, this is a tool that lets you do that. It lets you fit that into your play style and keep it central to what you're trying to do and not just get it shot out of the sky on the second turn. So then after that, we've got Adigalia. And Adigalia is an officer upgrade, so will only affect the ship that she is on. And she's very low point upgrade and adds some damage mitigation, excellent value over the course of the game. The effect is small, but it adds up. So if you read the card, you get the effect for every defense token that you spend. So if you're taking a big hit and you're spending a bunch of tokens already, you get more benefit. So that's really useful. And it's also worth noting that it synergizes really well with the Commander Obi-Wan Kenobi specifically. So if you look at those two together, there's some fun synergy there that just makes your ships even more survivable. And then lastly, we have Clone Captain Silver. I was going to say Commander. Clone Captain Silver is, again, an officer upgrade for the Galactic Republic. And this guy has a serious need for speed. His ability allows you to increase or decrease your speed by up to 3, as long as you have not used a navigate command, and then doesn't allow you to use one later. It's a huge swing in your back pocket. It can get you positioned to unload your payload, or you can get out of trouble real fast. I think it's a really cool ability, very unique. You only get to use it a few times per game, possibly, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah, well, and on Clone Captain Silver there, I do want to point to something interesting that that Frank was doing design-wise with this wave was, and you're going to see this in a couple of the Republic upgrades, is the idea of like, hey, it's a one-time effect, but actually, if you put in the investment, if you want to, you can reuse this one-time effect. So he starts with that token on him. He can just spend his own token in order to ready his card again. So that's your free use basically, but then you can continue if you want to actually pay the cost to reuse him multiple times. So, and I feel like that, it's an interesting little twist on some existing mechanics in a clever way. And I think, it fits with the Republic theme a little bit of like, these clones, these soldiers, being a little more than meets the eye, at face value. It's like, oh, they seem disposable, but they're really not actually, over the course of time, they can continue to perform. They can continue to, really, drive the Republic army and be, the core, the heart of the army. So I think it's a cool little twist, and it fits well with the theme of the faction for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. They can learn. Exactly.
Yes.
Pardon me. So now we're gonna talk about some of the upgrades that are in the Venator class Star Destroyer expansion. So we've got Plo Koon is a commander upgrade that helps improve the offensive efficiency of your friendly squadrons. He ensures accuracy icons during their attacks, so you're able to shred through defense tokens pretty easily. And then his second ability synergizes extremely well with a lot of the unique pilots for the Galactic Republic, and also with the Delta 7 Aether sprites, giving little pockets of adept throughout your squadrons gives grit to everyone else. You end up with these really mobile pockets of squadrons that can go where they want to go and take care of threats effectively. And it really kind of showcases that the way that the clones would fight is the Jedis would lead them and would give them orders and aid them with the Force, and it kind of improved their efficiency even beyond what they had from knowing exactly how these clones are going to perform in battle. So Plo Koon is absolutely awesome. Very excited about him. Then we've got Ahsoka Tano. So Ahsoka Tano is an officer upgrade. So again, only one ship on this one. And it gives you more options for eliminating enemy squadrons from a safe distance by giving them snipe. So it specifically affects your non-unique squadrons. And again, I think this one showcases really well how the Jedis work in tandem with the clones. So if you have enemy squadrons that are coming in, Ahsoka can give snipe to a bunch of your squadrons, and then all of a sudden there are no more squadrons there anymore. if things work out well with the dice. That's always the factor. And then lastly on this one, we have Clone Commander Wolf, another clone commander, which I love, and Clone Commander Wolf, another officer upgrade. And his ability gives you a chance to use your squadrons as stronger supporting pieces for your ships. They dole out raid tokens to enemy ships that you're trying to take out with your own large guns, and then you get to just take care of them with your ships. Very, very excited about Clone Commander Wolf. I think the clone commanders are awesome. I'm very excited about them. I've fallen in love with clones recently. So yeah.
Well, Wolf is also just the best. So other than Rex, but
I mean, they're both pretty cool. It's,
I know Will,
you know,
playing and watching.
Oh, go ahead.
Wolf. I was just gonna say, I know Will Schick really loves Wolf too. So.
Well, and if we can just go back to the those cards quick, I just want to point out that Wolf also has that same sort of clone mechanic we mentioned with Clone Captain Silver, where he starts with a token, but he has to spend the token, etc. But you can get extra uses out of him by just paying the cost of the token up front, from your own ship, rather than just using the free one on him. And again, it's that sort of sense of like, the clones aren't just like expendable bodies. They can continue to influence the game. And the other thing I like about these three cards here is the nod to the relationships of these characters in the show, because of course Plo Koon led Wolfpack with Clone Commander Wolf, and so they have an obvious synergy there. But also Plo's bros, exactly. But also at certain points in the Clone Wars, Plo kind of mentored Ahsoka a little bit, when she needed sort of, guidance from a much more calmer, much more wise, sort of methodic sort of Jedi. And so it's cool that they have a little bit of synergy too here. So a lot of cool combos you can make. And again, that was very much a part of the intentional design of the Republic faction is, like, hey, there's these cool new named characters, and they have these interesting relationships in the show, and that's an easy way for us to look at incorporating synergy as a nod to those. So
yeah, and since we're talking about that, Ahsoka in the art there, that's the costume from early in the Clone Wars, and very, very early in that series, she gets extremely comfortable giving commands to the clones. Like right away, she's like, "I outrank you because I'm a Jedi, right?" And that showcases here in this card. Like she's telling the clones what to do, and it works because she's good at what she does. Very, very fun. All right, so moving on.
Now we got.
Go ahead.
No, I was just to say, now we got some bad guys to talk about.
Oh, we do. So this is from the Invisible Hand expansion pack. So we've got the officers and the commander from that. So again, let's start with the commander. We're going to talk about Admiral Trench. He's a commander for the Separatists, and as you can see, he starts with 4 command dials on him. And what I think Admiral Trench does is he rewards a playstyle focused around coordinated movements and assaults. So if you can plan really well, knowing that you're going to have 3 or 4 of your ships do the same command, rather than get the bonus from a token, you get the bonus from a dial. So it just increases your efficiency if you're planning well. And I just love things like this that reward that careful play and that really planning ahead, especially in Armada. Like the whole game is about planning ahead. So the little bit of a hamstring on that you have to do the same thing with all these ships just really requires you to really tweak that in. I think it's a lot of fun. And then, so moving on to the officers, we've got TI-99, that droid there, and I think he's great. So the ability on him is, it's sort of an insurance against enemy squadrons. So it gives some of your squadrons counter as long as they're close to a ship, which means that they can shoot back if they're fired on, even if they're destroyed. But the drawback from that is it's not as strong as regular counter, because if you use that counter, it does toggle the activation on your squadron. So there is a cost to using it, but at the same time, the ability to counter strike against the squadrons that are firing at you can open up holes for your ships to move through, or for other squadrons to get where they want to be. And it's just another option, and really plays into that idea of the expendable droid army. They're just going to sit there and keep firing no matter what is shooting at them. Like shields are failing, no problem, still can shoot.
Well, and that's that counter keyword too. If they're eliminated, they still get to use it, and that's very much in line with the just throw bodies at the problem. Just shoot back. It's fine if you're dead. Like it's fine if you're destroyed. You're just a robot anyways. So yeah.
And then we've got TKs. TKs is an officer for the Separatists as well. He's an inexpensive upgrade, and what he does is he he gives you a little bit of versatility now, but then locks you in for the next turn as to what you're going to do. And if you know TK's as a character, you know that he is known for making a very rash decision and then regretting it a lot. So what I think is really fun about this upgrade card is that it gives players a chance to make their own decision of necessity and then deal with the fallout later. So I think it's a really great way of kind of getting TKs into the game in a way that makes sense for the character, and is also a fun and useful card.
Yeah, no, this is Frank did a great job like borrowing from the theme of like what happens to this character in the Clone Wars for this card, because this character basically betrays, like sells Moncal to the Separatists and then immediately regrets it. So like this is very much a like, up front, great, flexibility, interesting play, but then you've sort of handicapped yourself in a way where like, oh yeah, like now you have to deal with the consequences.
Never fun. And so lastly, we have some upgrades that are in the Recusant class Destroyer expansion. So again, start with the commander. We've got Martuk. He's the commander for the Separatist Alliance. He gives you an extra red attack die for your ships when you're attacking enemy hull zones that still have shields. But you have to cancel an attack die, when you attack ships in a hull zone that does not have shields. So it gives you sort of this front-loaded power coming in with overwhelming fire and taking down their shields and kind of whittling them down. And then once you're through all that and all the bluster is gone and, kind of Martuk's hubris shows up because he's obviously won, then there's a chance that there's some mitigation there. So it may not matter much if you roll average because you can just cancel a blank. But when you roll really hot and you have all dice that you want to keep and you have to get rid of one of them, and that's the reason that the ship doesn't go down, you're really going to feel it. And I think that's very Martuk. I think it's fun. I think it's very exciting. Then we've got
definitely, and it sort of plays. Oh, I was just going to say it sort of plays into that overconfidence a little bit. Where up front he's like, like I got him on the run. Specifically with Anakin, he thinks he's got it all figured out. He's made the first volley, etc. But it's a little bit of hubris there, and you may do well at the beginning, but you may put yourself in a position. A lot of these Separatist cards where like those short-term gains may have will have consequences later in the game. So you need to capitalize on those initial gains in order to make up for deficiencies later.
Yeah, and really also just cool, it makes choices matter, right? Like, do you want to attack more sides that have shields to eliminate those so that your squadrons and your other ships have more places to shoot where they're doing real damage? Or do you want to try and take down one whole zone of shields and then crank into the ship? There's lots of different ways to play it, lots of different decisions to make, and it also throws a lot of choice into your opponent's side with, which side do I want to show to my opponents? Maybe I should show the side that has hull open because they're going to have to cancel an attack die. It gives you lots of moving parts to work with. So Sand Hill is an officer upgrade also for the Separatists. So he gives you like 1 or 2 turns of a little bit of that squadron superiority. So what he does is he lets you spend the squadron tokens that start on him. He starts with 2. And for every one that you spend at the start of the squadron phase, each turn that you get to activate squadrons, you're going to activate 1 additional squadron for each of those tokens that you spent. So that means that you could have 2 turns in the game where during your squadron activations, you're activating 3 squadrons, or you can just go for broke, spend all your tokens, and activate 4 squadrons per turn in a squadron phase for 1 turn of the game, and just absolutely obliterate your enemy with that kind of just massive front-loaded damage during that squadron phase. Very exciting, very cool. Yeah. And then there's Passo Argente, and Passo Argente, he might be my favorite out of all of these just because of the way that it plays. So he doesn't have a lot of effect in the early game and kind of a negative effect in the middle game for the player, because every time that you flip a command dial, you put a matching token on his card. And once he has all 4 of the tokens, then when you reveal a command dial, you get another command dial, which is huge. It turns your ship into an absolute monster. So the trade-off for that is that you need to make all of those commands happen. So, your first turn, it could be anything. Your second turn, it's whittled down a little bit. And then turns 3 and 4, your opponent probably knows what you're doing. and they can counterplay it. They can, move a ship away so they don't get fired. They can do whatever it is they need to do. And that's interesting because, if you have Passel, then you can just say, well, I'm not going to do that. And then you throw them completely off guard, or you can just stick to the plan and a couple turns later, you're a monster. So really, I think that Passel makes that ship a target early on. Maybe they're just going to avoid it so they don't have to deal with it in the end. And again, lots of counterplay, lots of decisions to make. And I think upgrades like that are especially interesting. Yeah,
indeed. And I think this is an example where sort of changing things up a little bit, it has less to do with that immediate short-term gain. It is more of a long-term investment. But it is, as you alluded to, sort of making you a little bit predictable. And if you're really trying to get that bonus as quick as you can, I mean, by turn 4, your opponent knows exactly what you're going to do because you have only one, type of, dial left that you want to pick. So again, it's sort of changing things up a little bit, adding some different personality into what these characters do as upgrades. But at the same time, also sort of following that separatist theme of, well, we're efficient, but maybe we're a little predictable here.
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool.
Before we move on,
I was going to say, yeah, Gavin, you may have a perspective because you probably recognize a lot of these cards from having gone through approving art and seeing, print proofs and stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't have gameplay perspective per se. I think you guys covered that pretty well, but I just kind of wanted to give a little behind the scenes. I'm not going to make, pull up all the cards again, but it's been really fun working on Clone Wars with our art director, Preston Stone, and he's done a great job. And it's been really unique because so much of the prequel era is really covered in the cartoon, right? And the cartoon is very stylized in Armada. The art is very not stylized. It's not your Saturday morning cartoon art. It's very realistic. And so it's been really fun collecting reference of Tamura Morrison as the clone and really looking closely at all the clone models of like Clone Captain Silver and, and Wolf especially, and what makes them unique, what are their defining features, and really trying to apply that to a realistic person. Has been really fun, and the artists have really come through and done a great job with that. Other things you may have noticed that are like kind of fun small things is with the Separatist cards, Passel, Argente, and Sandhill, and previously spoiled, I believe, Shu Mai, are all clearly in the Separatist Council room arguing over a war table, and it's all from the same scene. It doesn't, make one piece of art or anything, but they're all just yelling at each other, and it kind of really helps define that thematic gameplay a little bit. We always try and add a little peek into it via the art as well for those that appreciate those types of Easter eggs.
Well, and I can say as a developer too, oftentimes when we have really great art, that helps inspire good game design too. You're like, this piece is so cool. Like, it helps bring out that character, and it inspires you to do that too with the mechanic design as well. So, I think definitely I always love the art that I get to see, come in, when we have art coming in from our freelancers and stuff like that, because it's cool to see for sure.
Yeah. And
go for it, Plum.
I was just going to say the art is so important because when you open the box for your miniatures, that's the first thing you really see, because the miniature is either not built or it's not on its base yet. You have to do some assembly with that before you can get the full effect of how cool it is. But yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is just as we step into the X-Wing reveals here, it's been a lot of fun also working with Preston. We started literally on the same day, and we both have been working hard on X-Wing specifically to really make the ship cards stand out and be unique from each other, and not just always ship with stars, because those get kind of boring, not only for the artists to work on them, but for your eyes, they all kind of blend together. We really wanted to make each card have a unique punch to it. So let's move on to X-Wing.
Yes, let's do that. So we got to talk, we love Armada, but we got to talk about some X-Wing too here. These spoilers have also been posted on Twitch as well, so you can go check them out and follow along as we talk about them. We're going to talk about a couple ship cards from the squadron packs. So we can go ahead and start with the Republic, or no, not Republic, the Rebel and the Scum ones. I just as a by way of an overview of these packs, I'm real excited about these squadron packs. I think, it's cool seeing us return to sort of the original 3 factions of the game of X-Wing 1.0. They have a place in my heart, and I'm sure they do in yours as well if you're a longtime X-Wing player. But then also sort of what we alluded to as well with the Armada stuff, really touching on the Clone Wars. Like these X-Wing expansions really are bringing in more content from the Rebels series. That's a great well of characters and battles and ships, that are a part of that sort of Rebellion era. So these squadron packs are also sort of a love letter to the Rebels series as well. So yeah, let's talk about some ships here. So first up, we've got, let me go to my notes here, Netrum Pollard. So I'm a big fan of B-Wings. I love flying B-Wings. They fly in a way you wouldn't expect for a ship that, even though it's on a small base, is like that large and seems to be doesn't really seem to be very maneuverable, very sort of weirdly asymmetric. But man, barrel rolling with the B-Wing is great. And Netrum Pollard lets you pull off some pretty sick moves at that 180. So he can't do 360 no scopes, but he can maybe do 180 no scopes for you. So it does come with the cost. There's that heading on a stress token, but being able to barrel roll and then flip is pretty cool. So it's just something cool you can pull off, and that's a theme with a couple of these. Is it's a big part of X-Wing is sort of being able to pull off moves and maneuvers that put you into those positions where you're able to capitalize on, a shot against your opponent. And, B-Wings can carry a lot of firepower. So being able to get into that position, can really, in some cases, win you the game perhaps. So he's super cool. I'm excited to play him. I think moving on here, we also got a new A-Wing pilot to talk about. It is Sabine Wren in an A-Wing. And Sabine here is, I think, I would say she's playing towards just kind of some good just efficiency. It does have a little bit to do with maneuvering as well, because you don't want to be in the enemy ship's firing arc, but you want to get yourself in that range 1 position. And then, getting an evade or a hit just straight up, changing one of your dice straight up, that's pretty powerful. That's a real good effect. And so Sabine is very much like, efficiency, upping that damage and that, sort of survivability with a ship that, doesn't have a lot of damage output. And, depending on how your green dice go, maybe doesn't have a lot of survivability, only has 2 hull, 2 shields. But it also plays into her character of being sort of that short-range brawler a little bit. She uses pistols, she uses thrown explosives. She wants to get in close like that. So I feel like the ship does a good job of sort of capturing how Sabine would probably fly an A-Wing.
She's that classic Mandalorian warrior, daughter of Mandalore.
Exactly. Yes, you got to watch out for the Mandalorians. They mean business for sure. So those are both two of the Rebel ships that I'm really excited to play. Again, there's some interesting sort of maneuvering synergies there that they're playing around with. But I also have to talk about Scum ships, because Scum is actually the faction that's nearest and dearest to my heart. That is the one that I played the most. And back in 1.0, like, man, the Hawks were, I definitely always have, I don't know about you, Plumber, but like when I play games, even competitively, like I'm always drawn to that sort of off meta jank. And like I played Hawks so much, even though they were like quote unquote bad. So I'm happy to see anything with the Hawks. And like this one, like it's making it cool too, because it's got that sweet black paint job. So I'm excited about this ship, because, like I said, anything with the Hawk, and I think especially too, this new pilot here we're reviewing, Tupusk, plays into that sort of scum vibe of messing with your opponent. Like the classic scum hawk, stealing your opponent's tokens. Like that's like the epitome of a scum ship. It may not be that efficient, but like it's going to mess with your opponent. It's going to play that mind game. And this does exactly that, but in sort of like a, like a 2.0 thing. This is as much as I'm talking about jank, this is also very much like a meta counter. The charge tokens, force tokens, like those are very powerful effects in 2.0, especially on certain characters, certain ship cards, or pilots, I should say, and certain abilities too, that rely on those tokens. And so being able to deny your opponent the ability to sort of reuse those is pretty powerful. Now, if your opponent doesn't have any, then, well, he's not really going to do anything. But like, really, like, how often is that going to happen? Like, these are important effects. And if your opponent doesn't have these at all, I mean, you're probably doing pretty good, actually. Exactly. If by taking this pilot, your opponent has like decided not to have any ships with that, then I don't know, maybe you're already winning.
And for those that don't know, this character actually comes from the Caleb Doom early Kane and Jarrus comics for post Order 66, and so his ability here is pretty unique too. He's the one that tattles on when he finds out that Caleb Doom is actually an escaped Padawan. So he's kind of throwing a wrench into the works, so to speak, of Caleb trying to get away and do what he wants, right? So another thing I'll say is that paint scheme is from that comic series, and that's what's featured in the box with cool green engine glow.
Oh yeah, gotta get that green engine glow. You don't see that very often. But yeah, so like that, like as I said, these expansions are sort of love letters to Rebels. The Scum one in particular, also in a way, it's heavily influenced by the Kane and Jarrus comics, which is pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, let's talk about everybody's favorites, the Imperials, and we got a spicy set of ships here. I think we just have to talk about Darth Vader first. I think, like, people wondered if this was coming, and here it is. It is Darth Vader in a TIE Defender, and it is exactly as disgusting as you thought it would be. Well, I don't know, maybe not quite. We have an article. We have an article on our website that you should check out. If it's not up, it should be up soon, talking about sort of the design process that went into pairing the best Imperial fighter with the best Imperial pilot, and what it took to sort of balance that. And, sort of, we took our time, we really put a lot of work into just this one pilot card. So definitely check that out. But it's super exciting to see, for sure. I mean, it is a terror to behold on the table, that's for sure.
I think the developers really started with it as worse, as terrible as a terror as it could be on the table, as hard hitting as they wanted it to be, and they kind of peeled back the layers from there. And we're like, where can we comfortably let this sit on the table?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that's a good point. And a little window into design work. I mean, that's how I do a lot of design as well, is start with it turned up to 11, knowing you're going to have to dial it back, and I think, it's cool to see too, again, sort of a nod to what happens in Rebels, because at one point, Darth Vader himself takes out almost the entire Phoenix Cell fleet, and so
one shot.
Yeah, watch out for Darth Vader. Yeah, well, not literally one shot, but like in one ship,
like a strafe.
Yeah, watch out. Yeah, a couple, like two strafes or something like that. I forget, but yeah. Cool. Well, let's talk about some of these other guys who, sorry, they're not Darth Vader, but they're pretty cool too. So the other defender here we have to talk about is Captain Dobbs, and he's pretty cool because he plays around with I think two things you don't see as much, which is ion as an effect that's not like related to ion cannons, or even ion as a offensive thing, to apply to an enemy ship. he uses ion as a cost, basically. And the other thing he does that's interesting is he's kind of a Imperial support ship. You know, there aren't as many ships in the Imperial faction that sort of buff ships around them. I mean, you have a few key characters, some like TIE Swarm synergies, but that sort of faction identity is more of a Rebel or Republic thing. But this guy being a captain, you know, he has, you know, other squadrons, other pilots he's leading. So he sort of takes that role a little bit. So this is an interesting sort of variation on what you might see in the Imperial faction. So I think that's pretty sweet. Gavin, I don't know, you may be able to comment on where this guy comes from in the lore.
You would call me out on that. I was so I was trying to remember. Don't you know, hold me to this, but I think he's from Rebels. I think he's from Skystrike Academy. I think he's like the second in command instructor type of guy, but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, you could always look it up online.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna apologize for my dog, and if you come to the after party later on in the series, perhaps I will show him to you.
Oh man! All right. Well, I was on the fence, but now I'm going to be there. All right. Let's talk about not a defender. Let's talk about an interceptor. Let's talk about Lieutenant Lauren. So this guy I alluded to before, that we've got, you know, several of these pilots that just play around with, hey, maneuver in a cool way you wouldn't be able to normally. And this guy's very much that. He's nice and straightforward, but like the sort of opportunities that he opens up by being able to barrel roll with that template, like you can end up now in a whole bunch of places you wouldn't normally be able to end up in. So it's a very simple effect, but it then puts the onus on the player to be like, oh, what can I do with this? You know, and I always think those designs are super interesting. And it also plays with your opponent a little bit too, because you've those options have branched now into where you can end up. You become less predictable for your opponent because of the different sort of places you can land when using his ability. So it's nice to have some in there that are straightforward, but like open up interesting gameplay opportunities.
This kind of allows the interceptor. Allows the Imperials to kind of play around with that side slip maneuver that we introduced with the Separatist faction. Because that's basically what this is. Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Plumber, you were going to say something about surprise interceptor?
Yeah, I just said it's the surprise interceptor.
Right, exactly. I mean, nobody wants an interceptor as a surprise. That's a bad surprise, let's be honest. Cool. Well, that is the reveals that we had left from the Skystrike Academy, the Phoenix Cell Pack, and then the what is it? Collaborators and Conspirators. I'm going to get the name wrong, but
Fugitives and Collaborators. I'm sure there are a few conspirators in there as well.
That's actually true. Sweet, but we do have one other reveal that we would like to talk about. So Gavin, I have a question for you, which is what do you call two squids who look exactly the same?
Oh, that's a good one. Calamar twins.
Close. They are identical.
Oh my god, I love that. I'm putting that in my back pocket.
Plumber, I have a question. I have a question for you. What do you? What does it take to make a squid laugh?
Better jokes than yours.
Oh, I know this one.
I'm kidding. It's good. What you got?
Tentacles. So here's the real question: Why am I having these terrible puns here? Well, they're all squid related. Is because we have a new ship to announce for X-Wing, and it is, for lack of a better term, a giant flying squid. Gavin, would you like to show off a model I believe you have at your desk?
Here it is. We have...
So a new huge ship.
Oh my gosh, it's backwards on the screen. It's very hard for me. Here is the Trident class assault ship for the Separatist Alliance. And I have a version that's not behind shiny plastic, so you can see it better. This is a ship we're very proud of in terms of production. It was very challenging for the sculpting team to make. It even has some moving limbs, which is pretty cool. Something we like to try and push for in second edition. It is a huge ship that you can field to both your Separatist and your Scum and Villainy squadrons.
Yeah, and I think we have some ship cards we can put up as well for people to see. It's super cool, super detailed. I mean, the paint job itself, there's a lot of work that went into the color scheme for that thing.
I'm just gonna hold it.
I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, it is my favorite thing that I've helped produce. It is one of 2 ships that I've been trying to bring to X-Wing that have made it to X-Wing. We have not announced the other one yet, but this one is super awesome, and I'm so happy we made it. And it's a lot of fun to play. It's got a lot of weird, unique things because it's a weird, unique ship. If we're gonna put up the cards, the Scum and Villainy art piece is one of my favorite art briefs that I've ever written.
Yep.
While we look for that graphic, there we go. So there's the Separatist card.
Yeah, and these.
Go for it.
These are going to be on Twitter later too. That's all I was going to say.
So we have
but Gavin, which way does this ship fly?
So that was actually something that went back and forth in development, whether or not it should move this way to grab onto its prey, or whether it should move this way like a squid does. And it ended up moving mantle first. It does have some forward-facing cannons, but then once you get in close, you get to use these fun guys, the tractor tentacles, which you'll learn more about, I'm sure, in some future articles. It's a fun ship that you want to get in close and deal a lot of damage, but you can also outfit it to be longer range and survivable that way. So it's got options for you.
Yeah.
Do we have the second card?
Beak as its main weapon.
Yep. So I don't know if we can.
Yeah, one of the possible hard points is a drill beak in the center. So it's an interesting sort of gameplay. Yeah, you can see it on the model right there. It's an interesting sort of gameplay where to go fast, you go, mantle first, but you actually want to turn around or maneuver yourself so that you actually are able to hit enemies with your, I guess, rear-facing weapons. There's hard points on the tentacles, and then there's a hard point in the center for that beak, or for some long-range options as well. So you have some different play possibilities there.
Here's the art of the giant squid versus whale space attack. Lawless pirates showing off the drill beak, just breaching that hull and depositing its crew inside to wreak havoc.
Yeah. So one last thing we want to also mention about it is because it is usable for epic play. It comes with some new scenarios designed just for this. We've got cards from one of them that we want to show off, which we will have on screen in a second. But it is basically, there you go. This is a deck, a AI deck, if you will. And there's a scenario where you basically hunt this ship. It is a Leviathan hunt. You're trying cooperatively to take down a rogue Trident. And you have this AI deck of different effects for the Trident that you reveal each round that sort of automates what it does, whether it moves to attack or disappears into a nebula, and you have to, while you're flying around, have to watch out for tentacles just popping out and grabbing you and hitting your ship. And it's really pretty awesome.
It's very Jaws-like to play through. It's very anxiety-inducing. It's a lot of fun.
I can't wait.
And this is this really came out of an earlier endeavor that we pushed forward, was that public alpha of the solo play. That the community really helped us out with, put out those rules, and you gave us lots of feedback, and that really helped fuel the design of this. So that's your hard work, community, paying off.
Thank you. But yeah, it's super cool. It's cool. That's a cooperative mode. Again, touching back on what Plummer was saying earlier about, sort of OP, like we really want to encourage different modes of play, and epic play for X-Wing is a great place to do that. And so, of course, this expansion was an amazing opportunity to do that. This is one of 2 scenarios that come with the Trident, so you can look forward to reveals for another one as well. One thing I did want to hint at, we're not going to reveal anything else here for the Trident specifically. We have future articles that has lots of sweet upgrade cards that you're going to get to see. But it also will include some fan favorite characters, including, I guess, one of the studio's favorite characters from the Clone Wars, which is Riff Tamsin, a literal shark man. The OG Street Shark. Yep. Mm-hmm. He will be appearing as crew, so look forward to him and some other fan favorite characters finally coming to X-Wing as well in the form of upgrade cards. So there's a lot of exciting things in this expansion. I love the miniature. I'm definitely going to have to get one of these just for my shelf. I mean, I will play it too, though. The scenario is a lot of fun. So super looking forward to this and really excited to show it off.
Definitely a mantelpiece.
Oh, I see what you did there. Cool. Well, that is it for our All Wings Report in stream. Moving on from that terrible joke, we're done with the squid jokes. But thank you all for tuning in. You can look forward to more content at 4 p.m. Pacific time. We've got more Mini-stravaganza stuff going on. You can find our schedule on our website as well. So check that out. You can also find the Unconventional Warfare OP event that we talked about there as well. And then on Twitter, too, you can check out, and I think other social sites, too, you can check out all these cool cards we've been talking about, pour over the images and the text and the spoilers. So again, want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you, Plummer, for joining me and talking about this sweet stuff. So thank you, everyone, and look forward to additional streams. See you later.